depending on who's in the room.
I know we are recording now. We are also working on getting closed captioning enabled. Thank you for that reminder, Doro. We're working on that. They should be enabled. You should be able to turn those on your end. We'll keep working on that on the back end to try and make sure we have closed captioning for folks who need it. Good morning again. I'm Leah Case. I apologize for the look this morning. It's been a weekend. I think we have enjoyed the chaos of the change in season and Nevada Day observed, Halloween, and we have Nevada Day coming up for real on Halloween. This morning, our very own Nathan Bakken is joining us to discuss to have a discussion with us on the proposed new language to define the purposes, values, and covenant of our denomination, the Article 2 Study Commission. Those are always exciting. Yeah, jazz hands. Those are always exciting. So what I'm going to do is a quick reading for our chalice lighting, and then I will turn it over to Nathan to get us ready. Today's reading is called United by Story and Bound by Love. It is from the UUA Worship Web. Gather we now into this space, this time when the wheel turns and the veil shatters. Gather we now to remember, to grieve, to prophecy, to complete our harvest before the long dark comes. Gather we now to tell the old stories and sing the old songs, to be as we have always been, the voice of our people eternal. Gather we now to celebrate that which was, that which is, and that which will be. Gather we now as we have always done, united by story and bound by love. With special guest appearance by my spouse, Randy, and our new dog, Leo, who joined the family yesterday.
Thank you, Leah, for that beautiful grounding, and it feels very appropriate for our conversation today of us gathering in the name of that which we have been, that which we are, and that which we will be. As we are in conversation today around the proposed changes to Article 2 in the UUA bylaws, which is a very boring way to describe really exciting changes. And it is an invitation for us to think about what it means to be part of a living tradition. For people who, we have a guest knocking on the door. For people, I know. Oh, hey. For people who are new to the UUA or to Unitarian Universalism, for people who maybe don't nerd out about church polity, when we talk about changing our bylaws, what that means is when the Unitarians and the Universalists came together in the 1960s, when they formed the Unitarian Universalist Association, they wrote out their covenant, their bylaws, their way, how this organization is going to function, just as we at UUFNN have our bylaws and our directions on how to hold each other and hold a sustaining community. And one of the bylaws in the Unitarian Universalist Association is that every 15 years, Article 2 goes up for review. And Article 2 is what we call our principles. It's the guiding force, it's the guiding theology of Unitarian Universalism. And in 1961, when the UUA was formed, they had 6 principles. And in 1961, they feel similar to what we have right now. And they use hypermasculine language. They use a centering of Judeo-Christianity. There's elements in the 1961 principles that by the time the 15 years kind of rolled around and they started to do that Article 2 Study Commission, in 1987, a proposal came forward led by UU women primarily to revise the principles and make it more inclusive, to help it centered being non-discriminatory, they added a seventh principle, which is our interdependent web of life. And so we have in our tradition periods and times where we have our principles and then our principles change. And in that same time of the 87 principles, the 7 principles, as we call them, came into being, that was the same time our at the time 5 sources were introduced. And so Article 2 expanded in 1987 to include our 7 principles and our 5 sources because it left out earth-based spirituality. And then in 1995 at a General Assembly, which is our annual meeting where all the Unitarian Universalist congregations that are in association with the UUA come together in a city and they discuss things and they talk about things and they propose things. And in 1995, they're like, we need to add another source. We need to honor our indigenous spiritual practices. We need to honor our earth-based spiritual practices. So 1995, a 6th source was added to our list. And I don't know how many people online or in this room read the Article 2 study commission that Kevin sent out. Kevin sent out the full report. We at the 2023 GA, what has been proposed is I would use the word radical change in language, because what is being proposed is a shift from the language of principles to the language of values. And what is being proposed is a shift from the language of sources to the language of inspirations. And Article 2 has this kind of big moment of saying, okay, what is at the heart of the Article 2 discussion is, what is the future of Unitarian Universalism? Who are we becoming as a collective? And they brought together, I think the commission is 6 people. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, and I apologize. I had a busy weekend, so my instant recall is slow.
It's okay. Right.
But over the last 3-4 years, since 5 years, because it started in 2017, this commission has been coming together to review our principles, to review our sources, to think about who is Unitarian Universalism becoming, and how are our principles leading us there, and how are our principles also not necessarily holding us back, but from this place of, is the language of a principle or the function of a list actually the most supportive format? And that was when I was at GA in 2023, we had, for those who have never been to a GA, during the sessions, it's public forum. People get up and they share their opinions and they share their perspectives and they propose amendments. And when the Article 2 debates, which really were debates, came up, I'm sitting there, and one of the things that captivated me the most was people being the pro Article 2 side, the pro value side, being like, the format of a list will always be an incomplete format. You always have to add things to the list.
Yeah.
And if the future of Unitarian Universalism, is it going to be a principle list of a 14, 20, or do we just keep tacking on and just have this long list?
Yeah.
Or do we shift our way of thinking completely and think about how do we guide ourselves without necessarily feeling like we just have to constantly tack things on? And so their proposal, and I want to be very clear, where we are right now is still in the proposal stage.
Right.
What was passed in 2023 is the proposal for these changes, with including the amendments that were proposed and voted on at the General Assembly. So we're not at a place where all of a sudden, and I apologize to my Zoom folks, I'll be sending out an email with all of the resources if you really want to get nerdy about it. I have handouts here for the people in person that is include the amended language. as well as a little infographic that is the like proposed structure. And yeah, and I have abundance of them. I didn't know how many people are going to be in person today, but I will be sending this out to all the Zoom folks. And so what we're looking at in this proposal isn't a abandoning of our principles. It's not a throwing the baby out with the bathwater movement. It's the commission took our principles and worked together to find the heart of what each principle is guiding us, and then invited, kind of summarized it in the language of a value.
Need to look at one.
Yeah, I was like, I should have kept one for myself.
That's the one you want? You want both?
I'll take both. But so in this proposed, change, we're shifting from the language of principles to this language of values. And from this kind of simplistic image, and I'll hold it up, hopefully the people on the owl can see this. I can't see myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
So from this really simple image, it's easy to make assumptions. It's easy to make assumptions around what does the UUA mean by justice? What does it mean by pluralism? What does it mean by love? And the actual document, which is too many words for me to hold up well, says that we're not just using these words as flippant words. The values are unpacked as both a value to guide us and a covenant to connect us. So each value word has in and of itself a covenant to guide. And so rather than thinking individually that I myself have to live into the first principle, we then instead get this more connection-centered approach of we are covenanting. When I covenant in these values, I am covenanting with every other Unitarian Universalist. The principle becomes not just this individualistic space for growth. Instead, it's, okay, we are transforming together, and this is how our tradition is guiding us. And I also want to make space because I know for myself and for many Unitarian Universalists, the principles are the pillars of our faith. People spend their lives, we have UU mystics who meditate on the principles. The principle of like respecting the inherent dignity of every person is a hard principle to live into.
Yes.
And these values and these covenants, if you take the time to kind of sit with them, you'll see the language of the principles woven throughout the entire document. That this isn't we no longer have the principles, this is our principles look different. Our principles are actually inviting us to connect with each other more, and the UUA is saying we want to make that connection more explicit. And so I want to invite us to I'm going to read out loud, and I apologize. I wonder, this is why technology is great. Leah, I am going to email you a Google link to a folder in a Google Drive.
Yes.
And I'm going to have you drop that in the chat.
Do you want the whole link to the Google Drive or just the individual files in the chat?
Just I'm going to link a folder. So it's just going to be the folder.
Okay, perfect.
But I'm going to email that to you right now, and you can put that in the chat.
Awesome.
Well, he says that.
We couldn't figure out how to get the closed captions going. So hopefully, Doro, you can hear us okay, and we'll try to avoid cross chatter, and we'll try to be very loud so that you can hear us and participate.
The changes they made was the word.
Yeah.
I have never thought of, and I just can't even say that principle anymore. The inherent word and dignity. Do you know what's wrong with that?
It's been a price on.
Which there was a price on humans back in the day.
Yeah.
And I had never even thought of that till I was at GA virtually.
Worthiness.
Yeah, that's what I was, we should just switch it to worthiness, but I like the way you rephrased this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, like, to Jackie's point, for those who may have not heard Jackie, what Jackie just shared was at the virtual components and the in-person components of last year's GA, they brought to the room that when we talk about the inherent worth of someone, and we live in a country with a legacy of slavery, where there was a literal material value placed on a person's life, it hurts and diminishes and minimizes and normalizes slavery in a way that we as Unitarian Universalists, that's not in alignment with our values and our principles. And so part of these changes and we're going to be doing, Shelley said in the past weeks that we're going to be doing listening circles. We're going to be having conversations. You're allowed to disagree with this proposed list. You're allowed to have feelings about it. Did the email link go through? Does everybody have access to the things in the folder?
The email went through. I did drop the link in the chat. I haven't heard from anybody trying to access it yet.
Okay.
I'm able to access.
Okay. So for folks on Zoom, in that folder, there's a PDF in the main body of the folder that's titled Article 2 with Amendments. And so that's going to be the document that I passed out to everybody in person. And I just want to invite us to take a moment and we're just going to read through what these proposed changes are. And as we read through, invite yourself to have feelings. Invite yourself to meet these changes and to notice in yourself, where do I feel like something was lost? And notice in yourself, where do I feel like something was gained? And so if I get to a point where I don't want to hear myself talk, is anybody who would also like to read and I can just pass things off? Anybody want to?
I'll be
Okay. Perfect. So the opening section C 2.1, which is about our purposes. And this is another key component that Article 2 isn't just our values, it also expresses the purpose of the UUA. Why does the UUA exist? And the proposed change is that the Unitarian Universalist Association will devote its resources to and use its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purposes are to assist congregations in their vital ministries, support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to foster lifelong faith formation and spiritual development, to heal historic injustices, to support and encourage the creation of new Unitarian Universalist communities, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. And I'm going to pause right there. What are thoughts, people? And you can type in the chat. I can read the chat out loud. But thoughts just on the purpose of the UUA, as this is the goal.
Yeah, says it all.
This
for me.
Sounds good.
What, Leah?
Yeah, I appreciate that they are explicit in supporting and encouraging creating new UU communities. I think I've mentioned before in forum and in other discussions, I live in Carson and would love to see UUFNN expanding to more Northern Nevada communities. So I appreciate that UUA added that.
Yeah. Completely.
Yep, same, I like it, I feel that it covers the waterfront very well. I don't see anything objectionable that should not be on purpose. I would like to see a grammarian take a hit at getting rid of split infinitives and balancing and make sure everything that's picky and all that, I'm sure. I just can't read something without doing that. I'm an English teacher, I'm sorry. That's why we need you. Right.
I'm right there with you. As someone who studied English, I'm like, ooh, these are choices, but the intention behind it. Yes. Emily.
Hi, I would just like to say that
I like this quite a bit. The unfortunate thing is how to condense it into a 1-minute elevator speech about Unitarian Universalism.
My whole thing is-
That's the only thing I don't like about it.
We could do that, but it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe eventually we'll
Yeah.
have wording that we can do
No,
that.
that doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I also will say, I don't think 1 minute elevator pitches have ever been Unitarian Universalist strong suit.
One of our newest members is a longtime friend of mine that we haven't talked to in years. Had lunch, talked about church, and she was like, she didn't like that. It was uncomfortable for her to hear. And then I got home and I took a picture of the card, front and back, and sent it to her, and she was like, oh, she's a WA now. She works in the childcare. She's a friend in the middle.
Yeah.
Right, so that was, that does condense it.
Yeah.
Or did, I don't know where we are.
We're in we're in the liminal space. We're not anywhere yet.
Yeah, yeah. And it's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
there's a way to do both and, for
Mhm.
certain purposes.
I will still carry the card.
Oh, and that's the thing is like the in these proposed changes, all the language of the 7 principles is in these changes.
Right.
When we pass out the cards, because let's be real, we're gonna have to use them or else we're gonna have to just recycle a bunch of stuff. But it's still going to be speaking to the heart of where this has been. And if somebody's like, hey, I got a principles card, but this is a value sheet, and we're like, welcome to the evolution, welcome to the transformation and the history. And I saw, Penny, your chat, this is the very front page of the amended bylaws PDF.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
So I see where you said that everything in bold and underlined was added. Was there anything taken out?
yeah, so not so much taken out, but reworded. So
Okay.
one of the big rewordings in the purpose was the language around assisting congregations in their vital ministries.
Mhm.
The original language just said support congregations. And so that was one of the proposed
Yeah.
changes from the commission. The bolded lines are the amendments from the discussions at GA.
Okay.
I mean, this says something to support is much mouth. Right. Really saying it pretty big, yeah.
Yeah. So now we're gonna be shifting into our values and covenant section, which is the proposed transformation of the principles. And I'm gonna read the first part, and if Amy, when we get to the interdependence, could you read that section? As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are. And so, oh wait, I'm gonna pause right there. That's a big shift
It is.
of where it's centering our faith, how it's describing our faith. I'm not gonna have us stop and just like do a breakdown of every section, but I just wanna like just note that we're entering the territory of change. And
Interdependence. We honor the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. With humility and reverence, we covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation, creating and nurturing sustainable relationships of repair, mutuality, and justice.
how do we feel about this interpretation of interdependence? What do we love? Where is some squishy uncomfortability?
Nathan, I put in the chat,
Yeah.
why did we add under interdependence of which we are a part? Is that to recognize that we're part of these systems, or that there's other systems that we're not part of?
I interpret it, and this is also where, as a theologian, I nerd out because we get to create our meaning. So what is meaning for me, Leah, might not be meaning for you. I read that as a way to kind of disrupt, like. The academic word would be androcentrism, but like the centering of humanity as the center of the web of interdependence, rather than just a thread in that web.
Yeah, I got it.
That's how I interpret that, but other people can interpret that differently. That's how it rings for me.
But I really like the humility and reverence. Because I think, I've had some discussions with a friend who's going to be, and I hope vocal. I don't want to say it right now, but that we sometimes tend to be above it all.
Yeah.
And we have to get out of that. And I think that sort of addresses that.
I do too. I think it's a little, as Leah's question points out, it's a little, hard to understand what we mean of which we are a part. I think if we clarified of which we are only a part, of which humans are only a part, something like that would say it better, but I
Yeah.
like the idea. I just think it needs to be more clearly expressed.
For me, what's coming up to me is, I like this, but for me, it's all about the action and not about the connection.
Mhm.
The connectivity part is missing for me.
Yeah. This is why I'm excited about these talking circles.
I will say though that, excuse me,
Yeah, go.
I love the idea of saying what we value and then saying what the heck we're planning to do about it. I think that's excellent. Yeah, that's an excellent improvement, because it's also putting our money where our mouth is. You know, these are just not some vague ideas floating in space. These are action words here.
Mhm.
So so for me, it's an and, it's like this and.
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah,
think it should be. I
Yeah.
think it's meant to, I think it's meant to be. I think it's meant to be, we believe in this and so we're gonna do this about it. It may not be clear enough, but I think that's what we're getting.
yeah, I think that's the piece that's missing, is the.
Nathan,
Yeah,
what I read is we honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. That's different from what you just read, isn't it?
that is, I wonder if
I'm on the bottom of page 21.
you are in a different document than us.
I like it though.
That's what opened.
I like it.
I think that's the original one, and this is the GA amendment. Okay, Leah just shared Penny in the chat. Hopefully it's it's a 3-page PDF. And this is the top of page 2.
Can you open this?
Hi, Charlotte.
Okay.
Okay, and just know that whatever we don't say today is not saying it's not gonna be heard.
That's right, that's right.
And what these conversations, what we're coming around is, as UUFNN, when we go to GA, there's going to be a vote where our delegates are gonna have to say yes or no.
Mhm.
And so over the course of these months is us kind of figuring out, what does UUFNN have to say about this?
Yeah.
And yeah,
So will there be a preliminary before GA, where information or suggestions are submitted prior to that?
that is outside my pay grade, but I will find out.
Last time there were like 69
Mhm.
different suggested amendments. And I think they heard and decided on 15 of them.
Mhm.
And then the committee is working on it for 6 months.
Yeah,
I think, and then putting it out again. And GA this coming year is all virtual.
yes,
Oh, it's all.
There's-
it's all virtual.
There's nothing in place, so I'm hoping, what I tried to do last year was find spaces for us to do that together here.
Good.
And I never could they would say, oh, it's there now, and you click on it and it wasn't.
Yeah,
So I'm hoping this year that won't be the case.
and we can just like use
Right.
Star King and have everybody
Right,
attend in
Oh, that would
person if
be
they
great.
wanted to.
either virtually or in the room. either
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Okay. I want us to at least get through these once, but
But
we'll see. I'm also not wedded on time. I'm like, if we get to 10 o'clock and this is what we get, this is what we get. So Marcy, could you read the section on pluralism?
Sure. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect.
How do we feel about it?
I like that.
So did everybody at GA. There's no bolded underline.
I was gonna say, that didn't change, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Does anybody on Zoom want to read the section on justice?
I can, Nathan, this is Leah.
Thank you.
Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations and the society at large. And I would add a note that within our congregations and the society at large is the underlined addition.
Thank you. Yeah. No, one of the things I want to note in this section, and as we kind of read through it, at least for me, you can see the 7 principles showing up.
Yeah.
That like, we support the use of inclusive democratic process.
Yeah.
And we also get the 8th principle that never made it into our principles list. And we have that incorporated here. Thank
I
you.
really like it.
In fact, I'm very happy about that because I had a problem with the 8th principle saying that it was goes with another principle. And so I really like that they pulled that all together. So it's not as redundant to me. So
And somehow it means it's integral to, it's integrated into everything we believe and stand for. It's not just something tacked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says that to be a Unitarian Universalist is to covenant to do this work.
Yeah, that's right. And to hold this value.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will read the transformation section. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. Never complete, never perfect. Thoughts, feelings? We got some applause.
This is not a change, right?
Yeah, this is.
I'm just laughing at how resistant people are to changing when there's something in here that says that we are open to humanness, though. I understand that, I'm just laughing at the irony of it all.
Reverend
Yeah.
Shirley always says humaning is hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, for me, I read the never complete, never perfect.
Yeah.
We are gonna change imperfectly.
And it's transforming, it's transforming.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Does someone feel called to read the section on gender? Oh, Billy.
Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality.
that's just saying, give me the money, damn it.
Now, you are too young to be so cynical about it.
I think it also, for me, what it brings up, I spent the past 3 days with the DREs of what was once the Pacific Central District, but has been dissolved. And one of the fruits of our retreat together and kind of Reno, I was like, can't relate. Because the Bay Area all the DREs of the Bay Area talked about how they feel the pressure to be competitive with one another.
Oh, what?
Because if someone doesn't like them, if the DRE at San Mateo make someone angry, they're just gonna go to Redwood City.
Yeah.
They're just gonna go to Palo Alto. They don't have to stay. And I was like, here in Reno, I was like, we're people's only option. We're the only, and so when I read generosity, and one of the fruits of the conversation is, how do we disrupt competitiveness across UU communities?
Yeah.
How do we show up and say like, oh, UU in Reno is invested in the success of Sacramento, is invested in the success of
Yeah.
Napa Valley, and ideally they feel that way about us. Was kind of the fruit. So that's also, and I also agree, I mean, there's a piece of this that also is like, money is involved,
It is.
and we are called to use our money responsibly.
But why can't we say we covenant to share our faith presence and resources freely and compassionately? It even emphasizes what we want to emphasize
Yeah.
more about putting it at the end, building to it, and avoid splitting infinitive. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna write the Billy Lee version, and that will just, we'll have the Billy Lee edit.
I need to go back and reread transformation and point my finger at myself, sure.
I think they're consistent though, 'cause I think they.
Yeah, they can do it all.
Yeah. And Jackie, would you like to read equity for
Sure.
us?
Equity, we declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities.
That kind of repeats some of the generosity.
I was wondering if
Yeah.
some of that should go up in that.
I think I experience it as they're making a very defined political statement of like, because generosity can fall into charity really easily, but equity is saying, actually, we're gonna like, to be a UU community, we're going to spend the $500,000 to make it ADA accessible, which is the strife of every New England congregation, because their churches are hundreds of years old and nothing's ADA. And so I feel like this shows up and it's like, oh, we now have to think about this specifically versus the like, yeah.
Okay.
But folks on Zoom, thoughts, feelings. We just reached the end of our values. This is the list.
Wait, did we read equity or did we just finish?
That's what Jackie just read. Do I
Oh,
need to read it
thanks.
out?
Sorry, Jackie. I guess I didn't hear. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
We can read it. I'll read it again loud. Like, we'll read it again. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities.
There's something that bothers me about the first sentence, and I can't figure out what it is. That seems to me to be less forthright and affirmative of the inherent worth and dignity of all people. I don't know what it is. And I can't, so it apparently isn't, I'll have to think about it.
Yeah. I think the difference between the first principle and this is the first principle is about how you're supposed to treat somebody. And this uses the language of rights, that this person has the right
Yeah.
to
It's
flourish.
just about them, not about us.
It's about them and not about us.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
I like that, not them, not about them, or us. We have to really work with that, I
Yeah.
think. I think that's one area.
I mean, they have it. It's inherent. They have it.
Yeah.
And that somehow the right to flourish. I don't know, that it sounds like to me they're trying to put two different ideas in one sentence, and that takes away from the importance of each of the things we're talking about. I think that's bothering me.
Yeah. I can't wait for your treatise, Billy Lee, and in 15 years, the Billy Lee amendment.
I think I need to shut up.
No, I like it though. No, this is my favorite part of religion.
Yeah,
That we are co-creating our religion right now. This is the act, these are the discussions when we think of the suffix letters, when we think of the debates that created Unitarianism and created Universalism. It's these conversations,
Yeah.
like that's the act of religion. And so please, don't stop talking to me.
Okay.
We need you.
That is not good anyway. I've never-
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
And Jeff says, so we need to change out our sign in the sanctuary to side with love and not stand with love.
Yeah,
Yeah, to speak to the value of equity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
right. We wanna
Uh,
make our grounds maybe more, our grass area out there is so dangerous for folks with walkers, canes, et cetera, and we have services out there.
That's right.
And we need to figure out some way to
Sam
stand
could
them.
not manage.
Oh
walking
my
out there.
gosh, it was,
I
I
had to
thought,
hold him.
Yeah.
He could not walk on that ground.
I thought the gauze were both gonna go
Yeah.
down on there.
Yeah.
Leah shares in the chat, this makes me so happy. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And we're gonna continue sharing them because the goal of these listening circles, the goals of these conversations is by the time June rolls around and we're all in this room for GA, and maybe some people are at home zooming in to give their thoughts at the, because you can, if you're a delegate, you're invited to share your opinion. And we get to make a decision as our community, as our wider community then also gets to make a decision. Yeah, Jackie.
And I'm looking forward to our congregation actually voting on and having a full delegation there. We hardly ever do that. We don't, it's like, well, because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
And
You
this
know,
year, we want to
and this year we don't have, and I don't know what it's gonna cost. I'm hoping it's substantially less and affordable.
Yeah.
But we rarely have our full allotment of delegates there because people can't afford to go.
Yep.
It's too expensive.
They had it.
They won't have the overhead of having it in person.
Right, so I'm assuming it's gonna be less.
Yeah.
I hope.
Probably in my mind.
So we are going now to section 2.3. And this is the section on inspirations. And so this is the proposal of a reimagining, a transformation of the sources list and to try and incorporate it into not a list, because how do we write a list of every spiritual source that inspires us? It is an infinite list. And so this is section C 2.3, inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we proclaim that direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are a primary source of inspiration. These experiences open, I assume that means open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which they were created and are currently practiced. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit and enlivened by the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. That's a lot of words.
I like it though. I really, I love
It's a
that.
long ass sentence. As a wordsmither, it really, really like, can we fix that?
Yeah, Jackie.
So maybe I don't understand, but maybe it's sacred, where are the earth-based?
I think there's a lot of, I mean, the histories, context, the legacies and lineages and religious ancestries you can include earth-based in. They kind of wrote an intentionally nondescript sentence that assumes the inclusion of any person's path towards spirit.
Okay.
I think that direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder, that's not. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dogma that's handed down to, and it's direct experience, individual direct experience.
yeah. And you can see there's many of this long, to use Emily's language, this long ass sentence. People had opinions. There are amendments. There are bolded underlined sections because people wanted to make sure that their perspective was represented. And for me, as a religious educator, as someone who nerds out over this, my favorite are the religious things that aren't easy and direct. That like, you're gonna have to sit with this. It's not just gonna tell you what to think, it's like, I have to figure out what I believe about these statements. Okay, does someone want to read the section on inclusion? See,
I'll do it.
thank you, Dave.
So section 324, inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities.
We got Trollen. Women. in that whole paragraph.
Maybe others except for the grammar.
Yeah, everybody else does too.
It's interesting that there's no amendments to that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really, that's a strongly worded, it says.
The one that I wonder is, we strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values.
Yeah. That's what defines
Yeah,
the religion part, is
Yeah.
that to be a member, to be a Unitarian Universalist, because we don't share a creed, we don't share
Right.
dogmas, what unifies us and connects us are our covenants through our values. And so that's the piece where I'm like, oh, this is like a polity sentence. This is about like, what does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist? And how do we help people cultivate that identity?
Yep.
And would someone on Zoom like to read section C 2.5, freedom of belief?
I'm available, unless anybody
you.
else wants to chime in, of course. Section C 2.5, freedom of belief. Congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union, so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed. Nothing is bold or underlined here.
So I feel like it was very matter of fact. We have about 8 minutes left, and I'm curious for folks, as you sit with these documents, as you hear these things, how does these proposed changes help you imagine the future of Unitarian Universalism?
That's what we have to sit with.
That's what we have to sit, yeah.
That should be written up in bold some way as you're going through it, I think.
Yeah, keep that thought, exactly.
That's really good framing, Lois. You know what,
And-
Dave, can I ask you to record yourself reading that inclusion statement? I really want to just broadcast that everywhere. I want to put it on TV and on billboards and take it to the legislature with me. I think it's very powerful to have you read that statement. I just think it would resonate with a lot of folks. So I appreciate you reading that today.
I just want to throw a wrench into the works here. I love this and I would love to be a delegate, but it's always held during Pride Month, which to me is exclusiveness, not inclusiveness. Just want to put that out there. Otherwise, I would be all in it saying, representing the church. So that's all I got to say.
It's gonna be online, right? That's
Yeah, well,
different.
Emily is going to GA, a part of sharing that Pride Month with others and working towards improving things.
And I've heard that argument before. Unfortunately,
I'm
just
asking,
like.
I'm not arguing, I'm asking.
Yeah, no, the thing is that when you're part of an historically marginalized group, you have rare opportunities just to be with that group in celebration, pride, whatever it is, like going to an all African American women's conference, that kind of thing, the empowerment. And it takes away from it, unfortunately. Yes, it is part of it. Yes, but it's not. And now that it's going to be on Zoom, maybe it's more accessible, but this has always been a problem for me and I was raised UU. So, for years when Pride Month started after the Stonewall riots, it was just always, these are my people. I want to be with them at that time. That's the only thing, Jackie.
Okay,
Okay, thank you for letting us know.
That's fair.
I think, and I like that idea, Lois, as we start kind of having these listening circles, bringing this, like, this is the first, like, Shelley's been doing it from the pulpit, but conversations like these are going to be moving forward, and they're going to be both online and in person. And I think having, like, I mean, I don't know why I just assumed signs, like just having a big sign as we're talking about our values as you walk in, for people to maybe write on a big piece of paper as they're thinking about how does this help me imagine the future of Unitarian Universalism and ultimately the future of UUFNN. Because if we vote yes or if we vote no, our community gets to decide that. And if we vote yes, we then have to live into these covenants. We have to live in, and that's the moment of like, oh, it's not just words on paper. And so that's the other piece is like, and so I'm just thinking of like, okay, we're gonna just have big signs of like, how are we imagining the future? And in a chaotic existential way, it also lines up with our big transition year.
I know.
It's like, we're gonna transition on everything.
I said that the other day, but it's truly a good thing as I think about it, because we're gonna be doing much of the same work.
right. Thinking of your transition team, what we're talking about.
Yeah, we were talking about
Yeah.
this, yes, at lunch. Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friday.
That is all I have for content. The folders, Leah says more polity and theology discussions with Nathan, please. Okay, but so everybody will have access to that folder, the folks on Zoom. In that includes links to sermons by UU clergy on Article 2. There are hymns. Someone went through and made a database of went through our hymnals and found different songs associated with each value. So in the folder that I shared with everybody, there's a lot of materials, a couple PowerPoint presentations that helped inform me on this discussion. If you really want to nerd out about it, you can. For the people in the room, I'll be emailing this out to everybody and have Kevin email it out to the forum email list. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful morning. I don't know how to end this.
That was perfect.
Thanks.
Kumbaya.
Yeah.
Well, and make sure you extinguish the flame.
Oh,
We
yeah.
don't want any open flames unattended during service.
Spontaneous chalice extinguishing. As we gather this morning in the light of who we've been, who we are, and who we will become, may we remember that as this light is extinguished, that call does not. And that light of the call to remember who we are, who we've been, and who we will become is carried forward beyond this room. Amen.
And it's good to get.
Mhm.
So great.